49ers beat writer Mike Silva wrote an article on yesterday that shook the world. Looks like 49ers owner Jed York is looking to take back the power and hard reset his franchise. Smash that like button. We're going to break it down right here. What's going on, 49er faithful? It's your boy, the WayneBreezie. Welcome to the show. Make sure you guys go ahead and smash that like button. Feel free to leave a comment. And don't forget, if you're new, subscribe. All right, listen. On yesterday, 49ers beat writer Mike Silva wrote an article. And I mean, if you choose to believe everything you read, cool. If you choose not to, cool. Either way, it's just damn cool. All right, he wrote an article and he talked about some of the issues that's probably been going on with the 49ers and their franchise when it comes to spending cash money. That's right, cash money. All right, now we do know that the owner is the one that is able to spend the cash money. It's his franchise, it's his team. And so when it comes to paying players cash, this is where it comes out of his pocket. We're not talking salary cap. We're talking actual cash. Big difference, all right? Now, the league gives you the salary cap and the money that you can spend. But when contracts go down to these cash signing bonuses and things like that, that comes out of the owner's pocket, all right? And so I feel like the article was kind of like reflecting that to where there's going to be some shifting and some changing going on when making rash decisions or future franchise decisions. Now, as a business owner myself, I do totally understand this directive and getting a return on your daggone investment. Like, you know what I mean? I think at the end of the day, it's all about return on investment. And when you invest in something, you buy something, you invest in it, you're hoping it makes you a profit. That's what that means. You're hoping it returns on what you made. You make some returns on what you've invested in. And with the owners, when they pay these players and they sign these players to these, contracts, especially after the rookie contracts, when they sign these players, they're hoping that they get production, they get, whatever it is they need to get out of players, especially for these big contracts. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the article that was written. All right. And, this starts off with, It seems that this stems back to the Brandon Ayuk contract. Now, the 49ers currently have some top players that they're paying top contracts to. Some players are going to be getting restructured, extended, like George Kittle, and they take big cap hits, right? A lot of the cash has been paid out, and so the 49ers typically get the players. Well, Kyle Shanahan, typically gets the players that he wants and keeps, okay? And so the last player that he wanted was Brandon Ayuk. And if you remember last year, man, it was the offseason. I didn't think it was too severe to where everybody whatever. But the behaviors, people point out the behaviors of Brandon Ayuk, and it was just, it was just a little crazy, right? And so in the article, it says San Francisco 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan stood up at his desk, sprinted upstairs, and barged into John Lynch's office, imploring the general manager not to trade the team's most productive wide receiver to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, remember, Brandon Ayuk was going to be traded, and then in that final hour, that 25th hour, Kyle Shanahan came barging in saying, listen, don't trade my guy. Period. End of discussion. Don't you trade my most productive player. And when you go back to the prior season, Brandon Ayuk, definitely 1,000-yard receiver. It was his second 1,000-yard season, and he was definitely a focal point of this offense. He's the best wide receiver on the San Francisco 49ers. He's the guy that can create separation. He's the guy that can run the route tree. He's the guy that can get open. And the Niners were in contention of paying him a contract. Now, it was going south, and Brandon Ayuk had requested a trade, and the trade was done, and John Lynch got it done. And then in that final hour, Kyle Shanahan came back and said, nah, I need my guy. And so then they made the deal, okay? $20 million of Jed York's money hung in the balance. And Shanahan, fresh off a heartbreaking overtime defeat in the Super Bowl, was desperate to spend it on a player he viewed as indispensable, all right? And so Brandon Ayuk didn't have the best Super Bowl performance. The 49ers ended up losing that Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs. Was this a move from Kyle Shanahan based off of emotion. And that's kind of like what this article kind of like stimulated too. Like, was it based off of emotion? And we just go on to see there was issues when it came to, you know, his behavior off the field, like, and that's what kind of Mike Silva talked about, some of his actions with, wearing the wrong shorts and at practice and being asked to change those out and things like that. And, it's just some stuff, right? And so this particular portion of the article says this was shocking turn of events, and every second counted. The Brandon Ayuk contract saga had dragged on throughout the offseason and hijacked the 49ers summer, and Shanahan and Lynch and York had collectively decided to move on to cut their losses. Yet Ayuk, who throughout the process had demonstrated emotional immaturity and changed his mind more sharply than he changed directions on the football field. Interesting, right? Now, I don't agree with all that. Now, I will say that I don't think Brandon Ayuk was having the best season coming after signing the contract. He was getting off to a slow start, but it wasn't, whatever. Anyway, that's it. 11 days before the Niners season opener, and expressed a sudden willingness to accept the team's last best offer. Shanahan called Lynch, and when general manager didn't answer on the first ring, the coach, fearing, ran to the room, had him trade, and had Lynch not trade Brandon Ayuk. And so that's kind of like what went down. So Kyle Shanahan was able to save, or losing, I would say, his most indispensable player. I like that word. I do like that word from Mike Silva. Also, some more on Brandon Ayuk, who particularly got off to a slow start before suffering the knee injury in mid-October, serves as a classic case of buyer's remorse. Now, I it could be that. It could be buyer's remorse. It's kind of unfair because he got injured. And so, let's just say, had Brandon Ayuk not gotten injured and he didn't perform, then yes, the buyer's remorse should kick in. But here's my thing on the situation, and I feel like Mike Silver's picking on Brandon Ayuk, and I don't really like that because he didn't pick on any of the other players that got max contracts with the San Francisco 49ers. I use the word max. I know it's a basketball term, but when it comes to contract negotiations, but I mean, when they get their contracts, I mean, I remember Nick Bosa waiting to like the week of or the day of, literally 3 days before the weekend kicked off and the Niners played their game. And I don't remember Nick Bosa performing well. I don't remember Nick Bosa performing well for that season. He may have ended that season in double-digit sacks, but it's a very low number coming off of the best season that he's ever had, the Defensive Player of the Year. He didn't live up to the Defensive Player of the Year standards, in my opinion, and statistically he didn't. He's still a top player in the league at the position, but there were several players which we talk about all the time: the Max Crosbys, the Trey Hendricksons, the Myles Garretts, and you hear Nick Bosa's name, but I don't think, and this is not about Nick, but I'm trying to, I guess for me, I'm trying to like match the energy in the room. Yeah, the difference between the two, if anything, was Nick Bosa was quiet in his contract negotiations, and he was absent, and I think he was absent so that he didn't distract or be a distraction for the team, whereas Brandon Ayuk was a little bit more advocate, doing interviews, doing a podcast, doing things like that, hanging out with his best friend Jaden Daniels, talking about possibly joining the Commanders. Like, I get it, and so there's a difference. I always say that there's a difference in positions that are prioritized when it comes to football teams. Not just the San Francisco 49ers. I think overall, general football, you prioritize the quarterback, the left tackle, the defensive end, and possibly if you have that perennial corner, right? Not a perennial wide receiver. Some teams will if their team is young and other positions, but those are those prime real estate positions. You get a lockdown corner, you're Gucci. You get the best left tackle in football, you're Gucci. You get a quarterback that can do what they need to do, you're Gucci. You get that defensive end that can rush the passer, you're Gucci. Those are the top four positions that should eat up predominantly most of that salary cap. And a typical team, well, the Niners are a little bit different because when you look at the San Francisco 49ers and you look at the top contracts on the 49ers, it's a little different, right? Because they're paying top money And I know it shifts around after other players get paid on other teams, but just looking at the 49ers, like you can see like their top tier money. You got a linebacker up there. And you know what? Nothing wrong. Listen, and this is not a shot at Fred Warner or anything, but this is how the 49ers feel like they want to allocate their resources and their money. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with it, but it does prevent you from having, it does prevent a bigger bill. That's what I would look at it for the owner. It presents a bigger bill, right? So Fred Warner, you can see his cap hit is at 29.14 million, and I know these are about cap hits. I'm talking about the cap hits, but I don't want to get into the cap hits. But I just wanted to see like who are the top players that are hitting the cap this year. And so Fred Warner, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa. So two of those players are those premium positions. Left tackle Trent Williams, defensive end Nick Bosa. Linebacker's not a premium position. Tight end is not a premium position. Maybe on this team, tight end is a premium position because he's part of that offense that can be an extension to the offensive line. But on a typical team, no. And then Brandon Ayuk at 5. He's not. Leonard Floyd has a big cap hit. I wouldn't be surprised. I know you see a lot of people say, the beat writers, Matt Mayoko reporting that he may be a cap casualty. Understood. If I'm the 49ers, I don't cut him. I restructure his deal, and I find a way to lower that $10 million on the cap hit. That's a lot of money. The Niners got to figure that out in a couple of days. But just getting back to the money that we're spending, I don't feel like it should be stemmed off of the Brandon Ayuk situation, but to each their own. And to go on about the article, you have the 49ers with Deebo Samuel, and we could talk about that. And he says that in his article, Deebo was traded to the Commanders because he was a high-priced deal. And so the Niners keep their players. And I think what Jed York is portraying, according to Mike Silva, is the simple fact that, hey, I want my team to be great, but I no longer want to overpay. And I don't feel like there's anything wrong with what not to overpay. I feel like that's a great thing. Like, Jed York is the owner. He does not have to overpay, and he shouldn't overpay if he feels like he doesn't have to. Now, there's going to be some positions where you're going to have to pay. And so now we're at the situation where Brock Purdy's contract extension is coming into play, and you already saw the reports of the San Francisco 49ers offering, per Jason LaCaforna, like the Niners were offering $45 million per year for a quarterback like Brock Purdy. And a lot of people are saying he needs to take it. And that's just not how contract negotiations work, even though that may be the feelings. But I don't think he's going to sit. I think what Jed York is saying is, I'm fed up. I'm taking back some of this control when it comes to the money spending, especially when it's coming out of my pocket. I want Brock Purdy here. I want him to be the quarterback here, but I want to control how I spend my money. That may affect Brock Purdy being the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, because they may no longer be willing to do these big, massive contracts for players that are still trying to prove themselves. I think that's what it comes down to. I feel like Brandon Ayuk proved himself. I feel like Deebo Samuel proves himself. But, Nick Bosa, George Kittle, Fred Warner, they continue to consistently improve on this roster. Deebo Samuel's no longer here. He's been traded. He had a decline year. Brandon Ayuk had an injured year. Now it comes time to pay your quarterback, who's going to eat up the cap space. It's just the way it works. All right. And this particular portion of the article says, as good as the 49ers have been on the field since 2019, they've appeared strangely vulnerable in the negotiation realm. In addition to Samuel 3 years ago, Ayuk last summer, tight end George Kittle in 2020, Bosa 2023, all right, Trent Williams 2024, all signed deals in August or later that sapped organizational energy. Contracts, negotiations will take away energy. They will. It will change the focus of the team. It takes players away from being with the team. That chemistry, the continuity, and it's different words for each player. Like George Kittle, chemistry. Ayuk, chemistry. Those skill positions, chemistry. But Trent Williams, continuity. Nick Bosa, continuity. These guys need to be with their lines. And when they're not there because of the contract negotiations, it changes up. And I think that's a big reason why you saw a decline in play. Samuel and Bosa each later admitted that the disputes had taken a personal toll that attributed in part to subpar seasons in 2022, 2023, respectively, all of which brings us to the current state of franchise. Selected with the 262nd pick and the final pick of the 2022 draft, Purdy has yet to be adequately compensated for his unlikely emergence as a top-flight quarterback. Now that he's finally eligible for an extension, he'll want one with his accomplishments. Purdy finished fourth in MVP voting in 2023 and lost the Super Bowl to Mahomes in overtime. His numbers dipped down last season. All right, period. Like, I'm not going to blame it on McCaffrey, Williams, and other key players being sidelined. Yes, that's the context behind it. But his numbers did dip, and he was missing some really key players, especially, when you lose your starting running back, your starting offensive line, blah, 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 blah. Quarterback play should decline. I don't care who the quarterback is. In the wake of a 6-11 season, a more significant change is taking place. Going all in is out. Now, I disagree with that. I think the 49ers are still going to go all in. I think they just go all in differently. The 49ers are attempting, this is what I like, to be cold, calculated, and analytical. I love analytics because that's kind of like what I like to do, but I hate using that term when you're talking football. Sometimes you need the guts, you need the glory, you need that intuition. It's not just based off of numbers, right? But that's where we're going in this particular situation. An organizational reset that coincides with the negotiation of a massive contract extension for quarterback Brock Purdy. So just reading this article, I'm just like, oh, man, like poor Brock. Like he's going to suffer because they're hitting a button, because Jed York is saying, I have the power, right? And rightfully so. He's the owner. He definitely does have the power. Pardon me for my He-Man reference, yo. I do miss He-Man. I wish he came on. I was watching that new He-Man on Netflix, and it just didn't do it for me. Even though I watched it, it just wasn't it. And so, unfortunately, Brock is going to have to figure out, am I going to be with this team on a deal that I think will work for him and the team? But the structuring of it is going to be a little different too, right? I think as far as the front loading, or the cash money, the back, however they choose it, the front load or back load, that's going to be up to Parag Marathe and Jed York. You know what I mean? I think Kyle Shanahan will no longer, I don't know if he ever had a say when it comes to contract negotiations, but he definitely does have a say when he says he wants his players. But if Jed York and Parag Marathe are putting their foot down, they're going to be cold about it. They're like, you can have them, but this is what we're spending. That's where it's going to get tricky. That money part is going to make this complicated. So stick around, faithful. It's going to be crazy. Purdy may be one of the most stunning success stories in the history of sport, but he also represents something deeper. A year before drafting Purdy, Shanahan and Lynch used 3 first-round picks to get Trey Lance. I'm going to sum it all up. And then they traded him because, unfortunately, he was the wrong pick for the San Francisco 49ers. He didn't work out. He ended up getting injured in the year. I just think Trey Lance came into an unfortunate event when it comes to this team. Like the opportunity that he was given, it didn't work out. Me personally, just for my personal thoughts, I felt like Trey Lance should have been given the opportunity possibly his rookie year, but the 49ers were competing, and we were in the NFC Championship that year, right? Trey Lance's rookie season. So it's not like Jimmy Garoppolo was dealing with injuries. He wasn't all the way injured, and we lost to the Rams that year. If I'm not mistaken, you guys can fact check me. You know how we do. But the year after, when it was going to be Trey Lance's opportunity, he ends up getting hurt, and then we get Brock Purdy, right, in 2022. And we get Brock Purdy, right? And so, like, that right there is the change. And so once Kyle realized what they had in Brock Purdy, they were like, listen, we're probably not going to need Trey Lance. We can figure something out. And I'm not mad at the team for moving on from Trey Lance. They got something for him, and they moved on. I mean, it's all about the flip game, right? And so I think Jed York is mad because you wasted the team's future on a guy that you said was going to work out, Kyle, and it just didn't work. So 3 first-round picks later, now we're back into building this roster, and just think about all the offensive linemen we could have drafted, or think about all the other impact players we could have drafted. You know, it changes that up. All right, it changed that up. Now, back to Jed York, just really quickly. You know, Jed. I like Jed York. I like what he's done. I'm liking what he's done for the San Francisco 49ers. I truly do. He's learned to take himself out of the football operations, even though it's his team. And I'm hoping that he continues to stay that way. But I do understand where he's coming from. Here's a quote. One thing owners don't love to hear is when they've invested money and or draft picks into people that the last pick of the draft is the guy that we think is best, York recalled in February 24. That's generally not great news. Those are from Jed York's lips. Another thing owners don't love, shelling out millions of dollars to players who don't produce, especially when those decisions are arguably impacted by impulse and emotion. Let's put this away. If you're an owner and your head coach feels compelled to sprint upstairs to commit $120 million to a player prone to throwing tantrums over the color of practice shorts, you hope that the coach is built like Andy Reid, or that your general manager's office door has really strong deadbolt. So this is all about Kyle Shanahan wanting players based off of emotion, and Jed York saying, you know what? No more of that. I need to see results. And if I'm going to pay a player, I'm going to pay a player based off of results. When it comes to Brock Purdy, this is going to be tricky because last year, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, a little over 3,000 yards. That might not be what the owner is willing to spend a lot of money on. I'm hoping it's a collective thing. And they look at the year prior. They look at the year he came in and took over. I'm hoping they look at wins. I'm hoping they look at, the context behind possibly why Brock had a down season, how he goes from 4th in MVP voting to not even being a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And now we're trying to pay this guy. Is he fool's gold? And I think that's the question that one of the questions that owner Jed York is starting to formulate. And so it could be interesting. It could be an interesting offseason for the 49ers, but I do see Jed York and his guy Parag taking back financial power and not allowing decisions to be made based off of impulsion, based off of emotions, based off of just things like that. I think Kyle Shanahan still controls this team. I think he controls his roster as far as the players that he wants, but I think he's got a limit on his black card. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, man. Feel free to tee off. I want to hear what you guys have to say. You guys agree with Jed York in taking back the power? Do you feel like Kyle Shanahan is going to be diminished? One thing that Mike Silva made clear in the article is that Kyle Shanahan is nowhere near on the hot seat. So don't look for him to be fired as of yet. Or maybe he will if things just don't go his way. Make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support the channel, by all means, become a member of the Breezy Bunch crew just by clicking on the join button or the link in the description of the show. You guys are amazing. Until the next time, keep it faithful to the Bay. Thanks for watching.
What's up, faithful? Thanks for watching. Hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And make sure you check out some of the other cool videos.